Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose, and it's great to see you all here this morning on this beautiful, cool morning. Yay! Thank you, God. Let's stand up together and we'll start our celebration service by singing Amazing Grace. It's on the left side of your... We breathe deeply, we relax our bodies as we listen to the words of our sacred reading.
From As You Like It by William Shakespeare. Now, my co-mates and brothers in exile, hath not old custom made this life more sweet than that of painted pomp? Are not these woods more free from peril than the envious court? Here feel we but the penalty of Adam, the season's difference, as the icy fang and churlish chiding of the winter's wind, which when it bites and blows upon my body, even till I shrink with cold, I smile and say, this is no flattery. These are counselors that feelingly persuade me what I am. Sweet are the uses of adversity, which, like the toad, ugly and venomous, wears yet a precious jewel in his head. And this our life, exempt from public haunt, finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything. I would not change it.
And so we breathe into that essence of tongues and trees and books and the running brooks, sermons and stones, and good in everything. Knowing the perfection, the inclusive nature of life, the wholeness of beingness. And as we do, we start to remember our place in absolute reality, that we are one with the absolute, that we can claim the name I am. And so together we sing, I am remembering who I am. And as we do, we remember the essence of spirit, of wholeness, of good within us, for ourselves and for all beings everywhere. I am remembering. We rest in this beautiful remembrance as the I am presence. And then we breathe in deeply and exhale, gently opening our eyes in love with what is, as it is, and so it is.
Thank you.
Oh, goodness. Wow, that was all. How did you do that? There was only one up here, but there were like 12 people playing guitars and singing. I don't know. That was awesome. Let me take this off, by the way. A little toasty. Okay. All right. So here we are on this beautiful morning, and it's great to see you all here today. My plan this morning is to make cause and effect really clear for everybody, because we talk a lot about cause and effect in this movement, and I want to do kind of an object lesson to make it clear. This happened in class the other night, and I'm going to repeat it for all of you. I'm going to sing something, and you're going to do what comes naturally after I sing it, okay? You ready? Excuse me. Me. Okay. Here she comes, just a-walking down the street. Singing do-a-diddy-diddy-dum-diddy-do. Okay, good job. Now try it this way. Okay, good job. Now we're going to do it again, but I'm going to change the words in the second part. So, here she comes, just a-walking down the street. Singing do-a-diddy-diddy-dum-diddy-do. Scratching her armpits and a-picking at her feet. Singing do-a-diddy-diddy-dum-diddy-do. Good. Okay. So it was a little off, but you did your kind of knee-jerk regular reaction anyway, right? This can be very subtle as well. I'm going to choose a different song because this happened once in the church when somebody sang it, and I was struck by how we all kind of went down the same neural groove. So I'm going to sing another song, and you're going to sing the part that I leave out, okay? When I point to you, you sing what comes naturally. So here we go. And the three men I admire most, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, they took the last train for... Good, okay, that's good. Good. That was pretty good. So nobody went, they took the last train for the coast. You all went, the coast, right? You got the subtleties of the inflection in there. Now, what does this have to do with cause and effect? Well, the song that I sing is cause, and then your response is effect. Right? And it's because you've heard it over and over and again, and it's just what you do. When somebody sings, here she goes walking down the street, you sing do-a-diddy-diddy-dum-diddy-do, don't you? And really, if we were to look at that from a neuroscience perspective, that is a neural groove that is formed in your brain. That is your knee-jerk reaction, your typical reaction that you don't really have to plan for. You just do it naturally when somebody sings that song. Not only do you do it naturally, you do it somewhat compulsively. If I were to sing, here she comes, just a-walking down the street. Now, don't sing the refrain. Yeah, I know, it's in your head. You can't stop it. Now, will you release tension if you sing it? Here we go. Singing do-a-diddy-diddy-dum-diddy-do. Okay, I feel much better now. All right. Okay, so that is a very sort of mundane way of how cause and effect works. Now, we're talking about adversity today, and have you noticed that we have a knee-jerk reaction to adversity? When something unfortunate happens, when there's a challenge, when there's something that goes wrong, we have a series of reactions that are much like a refrain that we sing, that are caused by the neural grooves, the habits and the conditioning that we've picked up over the years that cause us to react in certain ways. So let's say something unfortunate happens in your life, or something that you perceive as adversity, or somebody feels like they're against you, you're in a conflict with someone. Your neural grooves will tell you to react in a certain way. What are some of those reactions? Let's keep it clean, by the way. Okay. Run away. Uh-huh. What? Fight. Yeah, fight, run away. What'd you say? You can't speak. You get tongue-tied, right? You get afraid, right? Pardon? Shut down, yes. So defensiveness, running away, fighting, resistance, confusion, yeah, all of that. I love this audience participation. Let's do this more. All of that. I don't have to work so hard. It's great. Yeah. So all of that stuff is a knee-jerk reaction to when something adverse happens. Particularly when somebody feels like they're against us. And what happens when we do that? Subtly, what's happening underneath the surface, much like when we're singing The Coast. Something is happening under the surface, where we are giving our power away to that stimulus, which feels like cause, but it really is not cause. It's something else. We are cause. It's both cause and effect, but in that instance, we have the moment to take back our power and become cause again. But we're so accustomed to using those neural grooves that are already established that we often sing the same refrain that we've sung over and over again if somebody feels like they're against us. We become defensive. We become resistant. We become hostile. We shut down. We shut down and we get resentful that we haven't allowed our voice to be heard. We're afraid to say no, or sometimes we're afraid to say yes. All of those things are our knee-jerk reactions, and they're all based in the ultimate knee-jerk reaction, which is fear. Our fear comes up, and we react to our fear in various ways that we put out into the world. So, a moment ago, by the way, does anybody do that ever? Okay, all right. So a moment ago, when I sang the Here She Comes Just A-Walking Down the Street, and I told you not to sing the do-a-diddy-dum-diddy-do reverse, or refrain rather, you probably felt kind of stuck, like you had to sing it, right? And that's kind of how we are when something happens in our lives. We feel like we've always done this, I have to do this. The only way I've ever gotten around that is to sing a different song. So let's try that right now with the do-a-ditty song. I'm going to sing the first line, and then you're going to sing whatever song comes to your mind, okay? But a different song, okay? Here she comes, just a-walking down the street. I got spurs that jingle, jangle, jingle. That was good. I only recognized Hugh singing Jerusalem over there, but who knows what we were singing. But you see that when you sang a different song, you did not go down your same path that you always do. You didn't go down your same neural groove. So when adversity happens, when somebody seems like they're against us, when something seems like they're against us, when it seems like there's a challenge that's bigger than God in our lives, instead of going down that neural groove, what if we were just to sing a new song? What if we were to fill our thoughts with a different perception of reality, something new and a different way of being in relationship with this thing that is going on? So this talk is called Befriending Adversity, and that's what I'm inviting us to do. Instead of singing a song of being against adversity, or adversity is against me, we sing a song where we say, you know, this is coming up, and it is coming up for me, and I'm going to befriend it to see how much I can grow through this experience. Does that sound like a plan? Okay. Yeah, it can be challenging to remember, but that's why we have spiritual community, to hold each other up and to help us remember when we forget. One of the methods for working with adversity that I've been talking about a lot lately, somewhat in here, but most particularly in the foundations class that I'm teaching, is this thing called the third force. Okay, the third force is something that I learned about from Hugh many years ago. I've been with my husband for 31 years. We've been not married for 31 years, but together for 31 years. And Hugh is somebody that has studied George Gurdjieff, who is an Armenian scholar. And George Gurdjieff spoke about this thing called the third force. Now, it came up in our relationship because, unbeknownst to many of you, sometimes we have arguments. And I know, shocking, I know, yeah. But one of the things that Hugh has suggested over the years, and when we remember to do it, we do it. We don't always remember to do it, but is to state both opinions, both opposing opinions, in an objective manner, right? State them, they're subjective opinions, but we state them objectively. You know, that means like not pretending that it's the only way to think, right? And we just allow them to sit in the room, and then we allow the third force to create something new from the tension of those two opposite opinions. It can take some time, and it requires patience, and it requires a lot of spiritual maturity and discipline, but it really is very effective to allow something greater than our individual opinions to create something that comes forth, something new that is not a win for me or a win for him, because if it's a win for me and he loses, or if it's a win for him and I lose, then that's very second force. That's not third force. It's something that is a win-win, where it may require a little bit of stretching on our parts, but it does create something that inspires greater growth and greater transformation, okay? Because often, you know, you've probably recognized that if you have an argument with a spouse or other, that if somebody wins and somebody else loses, then, you know, you're carrying around that resentment for a while, and that doesn't bode well for the relationship. I'm suggesting an opportunity where in all of your conflicts, whether it's with life or with another person, that you can have Spirit provide you with something that really feels like a win-win for all beings. Does that sound possible? In God, all things are possible, okay? All right. So I learned about it first from Hugh and George Gurdjieff, and then recently I've been reading more about it from this author named Cynthia Bourgeault, who is she's an Episcopal priest, and she is a mystical priest, and she's also a colleague of Richard Rohr's. That's how I know her. And she talks about the third force. She calls it the law of three, but she talks about it as an essential component of reality, that reality, all of reality is engaged in this Trinitarian dynamic relationship, and that that there does appear to be opposing forces, darkness and light, or good and evil, but the third force, the reconciling factor, which is the third force, throws that off balance so that something new can be formed from it. To paraphrase what Cynthia Bourgeault teaches about the third force, is she says that there is always, in the appearance of a conflict, there is an affirming factor, there is a denying factor, and then there is a reconciling third. And then from the willingness to hold the tension of the opposites and project them into the reconciling third, a new outcome appears. Now you notice that I'm going bump, bump, V, bump. Does that look familiar, right? That V that does not stand for Ventura, okay, that V that stands for the movement of thought into form. So how this relates to the science of mind is that, Ernest Holmes, many people in Science of Mind will quote Ernest Holmes, who said, we must turn entirely away from the condition. And sometimes people feel that means that if something is bad, you have to pretend that it's not even there. You know what Woody Allen said about that? Woody Allen said, I don't get angry, I just grow a tumor. Okay. I know, it's bad. It's really bad. Denial doesn't work very well because, another thing that Richard Rohr says that's very, a little more PC, but he says that what you do not transform, you will transmit. So what Cynthia Bourgeault and other authors and people like me are asking us to do is to consider that turning entirely away from the condition doesn't mean pretending that it doesn't exist. It means looking at the condition objectively and refusing to empower it, rather, with our consciousness, with our resistance, with our defensiveness, with our denial, with all of those things that we do that think are helping. All of those are actually empowering the condition. So what it really means, I think, is to see what you want, see what you don't want, tell the truth about it, and know as you're telling the truth about it that it's not the entire truth about it, that these things that you want or that you don't want are encapsulated by a much greater truth. Okay, so you can hold your truth lightly. It's that thing that I always do with you where I ask you to touch your elbow, and we say, are you touching your body? And you say, yes, we're touching our body. But then I say, are you touching your whole body? And you're not. So touching your elbow is touching your body. It's true and it's not true at the same time. When we have an opinion, definitely it's true. We don't want to say that our opinion is untrue. It's true for us, but it may not be true in the realm of absolute. It may not be absolutely true in the realm of the absolute. Does that make sense? Okay. So really what I'm talking about is impermanence and detachment and the willingness to be with conflict, to be with the tension of opposites in a way that is detached and loving, in a way that invites wholeness and reconciliation for all, and then just surrendering it to this reconciling force that ultimately will create an outcome that is a win-win, or something that is not along the lines of normal human thinking. It's more mystical thinking. I know that this is kind of, what's the word I want? Academic, the way I'm teaching this right now. So I thought I would give you a real-life example of a way that the third force has worked with me. It's subtle, and also this story makes me look bad. But you all are used to that by now, aren't you? All right. Okay, let me start with a caveat. I work, as you do too, I'm sure, very hard at being a good person and a kind person. Am I correct? You all work very hard at being kind and good people. I'll also share with you that one of my favorite verses from the Bible, so you know I like the Bible, I'm not terrified of the Bible, as some people in religious science are. I like the verse that says, it's by Jesus. Jesus spoke it. He said, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. And then he says, the disciples, there's more to it, but then the disciples say, well, we never did that. And Jesus says, well, no, when you did that to the least of my brethren, you did it unto me, right? Isn't that beautiful? It's a beautiful thing. It means that every time we help somebody in need, we are serving the Christ consciousness. It's beautiful, in theory. The other thing, which makes what I'm about to say sort of odd, is that I've shared with many of you, I think there's a lot of new faces in here, so if you don't know this, you'll know this now, is that a lot of my ministry and a lot of my take on religious science and mystical theology is about blending the sacred and the profane. So I'm always running around saying that nothing exists outside the walls of this place called existence, quoting either St. Francis or Rabia di Basra. It's a little controversial as to who actually said that. Everything belongs. Nothing exists outside the walls of this place called existence. God is all there is. You have to believe that either God is all there is or God is not all there is. And I choose to believe that God is all there is. Okay? So that's my caveat, so you don't hate me too much when I say what I'm going to say. Or judge me too much. I don't think you'll hate me, but you might judge me. So now I want to ask you to put yourself in my place for a moment. Imagine at your home that you have people that are sitting on your front porch or sitting in your lawn. They're drinking, they're smoking crack, they're shooting up drugs, they're belligerent and argumentative when you ask them to leave sometimes. They sometimes will use your steps or parts of your building or parts of your lawn as a bathroom or a vomitorium. And how would you feel about that? Would you like it? Not so much, yeah. Well, this is our spiritual home, and we have that going on some of the time. Some of the people who do that happen to be homeless and mentally ill. Now, how do we deal with that? Because we want to be good people. We want to be kind, we want to be loving. I just read that quote from the Bible about how, we're feeding the stranger and we're giving ourselves to the poor, and when we do that, we're serving the Christ. But how do we reconcile that? The affirming factor of wanting to be good people with the denying factor of the idea that people are profaning the temple. Does that bring us to the edges of our compassion? Does that bring me to my edges of saying, okay, this is sacred, but this is not sacred? Ah, yes, it does, and that's a powerful place to be. That's when you can really start doing the work. And so we did start to work on it. It escalated for a while because of some changes in the city. And one of the things that we started with was at the board level, we started talking about to focus on the behavior, not the person. When I asked you if you would like those behaviors at your home, many of you said, no, we probably wouldn't. And it doesn't have to do with anybody's socioeconomic status or what have you. It's just the behaviors that we're looking at. The way that I reconcile this for myself often is to think about, let's talk about the three men I admire most. That changes from day to day, but today the three men I admire most might be Jesus, the Dalai Lama, and William Shakespeare, okay? And if the three men I admire most were sitting on the front steps and drinking, passing around a bottle of Jack Daniels, Jesus, the Dalai Lama, and William Shakespeare, chugging their Jack Daniels, and then, littering, yelling at people as they were going by, and then they went on the wheelchair ramp and made a little dum diddy do. I would probably ask them not to do that, right? So, if somebody is doing something that feels off to you, you can always ask yourself, is it the behavior or is it the person? And as we learn in corporate, we focus on the behavior, not the person. And see if that behavior is acceptable to you. And you have a right to say whether or not that behavior is acceptable to you or not. And to hold that up into the light of the third force. Another thing that we did was we had several meetings and talked about it and just decided to hold the tension of the opposites, the ambivalence that we feel about this situation that tends to go on. And just sit with that. Sit with the idea that we want to be good, kind, loving people, and we're a church and we should be a sanctuary, and that also these certain behaviors are not acceptable. How do we sit with that tension? And we just did. We just sat with the tension. And the group I was with invited me to ask the congregation to hold that tension with me without trying to fix it. And so I'm asking you to do that with me right now. And recognize that there is a solution, a win-win. And it's not about eradicating the people that are, quote unquote, profaning the temple. It's something deeper than that. It's a win-win for both of us, okay? And I don't mean to sound like us and them, but language, dualistic language, kind of doesn't leave me a choice right at the moment. So then the next thing that I did was in the interest of holding the dynamic tension of this, was I wanted to share it with the foundations class that I'm teaching, which is a big class, and a lot of very wise people in that class, and it was a wonderful experience. I shared this scenario with them, and they all had lots of wonderful things to say, and I learned a lot from everybody, and I got a new perspective. And I left the class feeling, oh yeah, I'm kind of the meanest person in the room, I mean, I'm the one, myself and others are dealing with it much of the time. Our poor board president, who's graciously doing the sound today, carries rubber gloves in his backpack on a regular basis. But I felt the class thinking, oh, you're mean, you're a bad person, you're a bad minister, why can't you be more loving? Why can't you be more like that stupid Bible verse where you're like giving your stuff away to people and, seeing the Christ in everyone? What's wrong with you? And I decided to hold that tension as well, that I should be better, but I'm this right now. And that's when I really felt the third force come in. I was driving home and thinking about my conflict with the people that we serve, that sit on the steps. And I started thinking of a memory. When I lived in New York, I worked as a per diem nurse in many, many different cities in the hospital, in the city, many different hospitals in the city. And one of the hospitals that I worked in was Bellevue. You've all heard about Bellevue in the movies, and they always make it look really awful, and it really was not that bad. But I worked in the prison unit with the, I don't know what's called anymore, but back then, this is probably not politically correct, but the criminally insane. What do you call it now? Anybody? Is that what you call it? Okay. All right, okay. It doesn't sound very politically correct. The insanity challenged? Okay. All right. I apologize to anybody who's in that. So I worked in the prison, but the place where I got sent the most was the homeless unit. And I loved working in the homeless unit. I loved it. I loved serving those people because it was such a great sense of joy to give them food and to give them shelter and to give them all of the things that Bible verse from Jesus talked about, to give them love, to give them a place to take a shower, to give them a bed where they could rest. It was such a joy. And they didn't always even appreciate it, but it was still a joy to do it. And then I realized that the problem for me, and this may just be me, but it just kind of shows you how the process works, how the third force process works. The problem for me is that when I'm addressing the homeless people on the street, or the people that are engaging in those behaviors on the street, it's not really about what they're doing. I'm not resentful of what they're doing. I am feeling resentful of my own sense of helplessness. And you see how that changes things? There's an aha in that. There's a settling. There's a grace to that. And there's a knowing, an empowering knowing, that once I've identified that I am struggling with my own sense of helplessness, then that is the point of power. That is the place where I can start doing the work. That is the place where I can pray. And I'm not praying for the situation to change. I am praying for a way to engage my own sense of helplessness, to transform it into helpfulness. You see what I mean? And you see how much deeper that goes than just get them out of here or just let them do whatever they want. You see? So there's already been shifts, not because of me, but because of the work of some of the staff is doing. There's it seems to be much more of a partnership going on of the people that sit around here helping pick up garbage and doing various tasks, and us being giving them water in the heat and that type of thing. But I gave you that example so that you could apply it to your own lives. If there's a place where it feels like there's an impasse, just be with it. Be with it and allow the greater yet to be to give birth to itself through the third force. I'll kind of go over the steps in a more generic way, the way that I see it right now. And this is new to me, so it continues to evolve, and I'll be speaking more about it because I want to share with you that we have had lots of people who are working with this way in the center, and there have been some miraculous stories of transformation, which are all unfortunately confidential at this point. But maybe at some point I'll get them to stand up and share. But okay, so one of the things that we're willing to do in terms of working at it is just to hold, I've said it before, but to hold what you like or what you want and hold what you don't want. You can visualize it in the top of the religious science symbol if you want, and just sit with them and tell the truth about what you want and what you don't want, and also how you feel about what you want and what you don't want. I was feeling ashamed of being resistant, and I had to tell the truth about my shame. I couldn't be ashamed of my shame. I had to tell the truth about it, right? So just sit there in truth. And we know that the truth cannot operate in a lie. So as soon as you start telling the truth starts getting busy. The truth starts creating something greater, the greater yet to be. We sit there, we hold it, and we continue to surrender. As we hold the truth about what is happening, hold our truth about what is happening, we also hold a greater truth, knowing that there is a truth, a source truth, an absolute truth that contains both of these polar opposites. And then we surrender these two truths through conscious labors, through letting go, through willingness, to that reconciling factor which leads us to absolute truth. Now I want you to be really clear for just one moment that surrender does not always look like surrender. If your surrender in the past has been letting people walk all over you, letting people bully you, then your surrender might look like something else. Your surrender might look like letting go of the need to be liked and standing up for what is true, for what is most right. So you see, there's layers of subtleties about this. But anyway, then we surrender. We hold the opposites, surrender, and then wait for the response of the third force, which is another way of saying God, or the whole of Spirit, or the Holy Spirit. Wait for the response, and learn to recognize the response. In the example I gave, it was quite subtle. It was just a tiny shift in consciousness. But you'll find, as you work with this more, that your response to the response starts becoming obvious. For me, I experience a sense of, a relief. And I heard it in the congregation when I said about my own helplessness was the issue. A lot of you folks said, oh, yeah, absolutely. There will be sort of a feeling of homecoming and heart expansion and possibility. So we wait for that. And then we act on it through prayer, through physical action, through willingness, through sharing it with another, through spiritual community, through all of those things and so much more. We have an amazing capacity to change our lives and to change the world for good. One of the things that has been struggling for me, challenging for me this year, has been the polarization that I see happening, not only politically, but in so many issues. There's so many times where something comes up and it seems so clear that there is this polar opposite going on of you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong, right? And the more that I learn about that, this side can bully this side into submission, or this side can bully this side into submission, and that doesn't really provide lasting change. That is the second force operating. And so I'm going to close with a quote from Cynthia Bourgeault that shows us the possibility for this work, that not only does it bless us as individuals, but it can bless the entire world if communities like us, open-hearted, loving communities like us, can do this work, not only with each other, we practice with each other, we share love here with each other, but then we serve love by bringing this work out into the world, into all of our relationships and conditions. So here's the quote from Cynthia Bourgeault. And she writes, "The law of three is good to know about simply because it's such a useful tool. Once you get the hang of it, it has remarkable leverage to bring to bear on any situation where process and change are involved, and it is particularly brilliant in situations that appear to be at an impasse. You might consider it the Gurdjieff equivalent to what the Buddhists call skillful means. Learning to wield the third force is in itself a path of conscious transformation. One can only imagine how greatly the political and religious culture wars of our era could be eased by the simple courtesy of the law of three, Number one, the enemy is never the problem, but the opportunity. Number two, the problem will never be solved through eliminating or silencing the opposition, but by learning to hold the tension of the opposites and launch them in a new direction. Imagine what a different world it would be if these two simple precepts were internalized and enacted all the time. Will you imagine with me? Will you imagine with me and pray for that as we do a special prayer today? I'm going to invite Reverend Karen Mitchell, who's going to be doing some work at our center, but we're starting her out doing this. She's going to do a song that leads into a prayer, and there you go.
And leads into a song again.
And leads into a song again. Okay, may I stay up here to help lead So I Am So Blessed?
Please,
Okay,
yes,
all right.
yes. Hello, Ventura. I love you guys. I wrote this song based on this wonderful quote by Rumi that we, as individualized expressions of divine existence, we aren't just drops in the ocean. We're actually the whole ocean in a drop. So just know that with me right now. I'm going to sing a little bit. We're going to do prayer in the middle and come out singing together. One of the many, or one of the few, insignificant, or ego crashing through. Where do I belong in everything I see? Am I part of something? Is it part of me? I am not just a drop in the ocean. I am not just a wave on the sea. I am love, I am life, set in motion. The whole ocean in a drop. That's me. And now just breathe with me now and feel the one and only presence that is love, that is only love, that is who we are. And so I know in this moment, right here and right now, I know that truth, and I claim all the opposites as one. And I know in my heart great gratitude for all that is, and so it is. Sacred and profane, by any other name, the rose would smell as sweet. Divinely human all, never play it small. The world is at your feet. Keep your head in the stars and your toes in the sand. 'Cause you are not just a drop in the ocean. You are not just a wave on the sea. You are love, you are the whole ocean in a drop. Sing it. I am not just a drop in the ocean, not just a wave on the sea. I'm not just a wave on the sea. I am love, I am life, set in motion, the whole ocean in a drop, the ocean in a drop, the entire ocean in a drop. That's me. Oh.
I'm glad to be here for the first time in Ventura, California, and thank you. And I'm from a town called Kyoto, Japan, originally, and this is a piece that I wrote in a small village in Kyoto Prefecture, where my grandparents are from. And this piece is called a takibi, which means bonfire. And making fire was sort of a tradition, especially in the rural part of Japan. And when I was a kid, I remember when I used to visit my grandparents' place, they usually had fires. And even though I live here in the States, I live in New York City, which is very far from the village. And even though my grandparents are already gone, passed away, but when I think of that moment and that place, I still felt very connected. And about 5 years ago, I had a chance going back to this place after a while. And I brought my guitar and I wrote this piece in the village. Thank you.